I'm happy to be back. So I studied computer science. So this was my department, my building, or not my building, but the building where I worked at and studied at. So how many of you are in computer science here? That's it? Only what happened? Are they all programming outside? So are the rest of you Stanford students here or alums? I see some friends and alums here. That's great. So I'm very happy to be here. I just flew in this morning. I scheduled my flight to be here for Richard's talk. He told me there's only be 20 people, so I'm really impressed by the crowd. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Bitcoin and China and my startup in China called BTC China. So just to make a correction, I actually got involved earlier this year, so it's been about 8 months or so involved in BTC China. How many of you have heard of Bitcoin? I assume almost all. And how many of you have Bitcoins? Wow, that's awesome. This is why this is called Silicon Valley. You guys are all into it. This is great. And if those of you who have bank accounts in China, you can buy some at my exchange afterwards. So let's do this. I have two slides. I have echo here. Okay, so I have two decks here. This one is about Bitcoin in China. Another thing I could do is talk about Bitcoin at a high level. Would you guys want to go through some slides about Bitcoin at a high level? Okay, so let's do that. So I first prepared this deck half a year ago. So some of the numbers may be outdated, but I'll update you. Essentially, let's talk about what is Bitcoin, right? So we know it's a digital currency. We think it's a digital currency, but more importantly, is it really virtual currency, or is it more like money, or is it more like an asset? So what do you guys think? How many, show of hands, how many of you guys think it's really money? Okay, just like 12 people. How many, who thinks it's an asset? Well, more. Well, guess what? It turns out money and asset have a relationship. They're not exactly the same thing, but rather, money is really a subset of, a kind of asset, if you will. Other types of assets include stocks, real estate, gold, and money is one kind of asset. So everybody has money, right? So it's the most common of all assets. And more broadly, if you look at assets, I'm going to go over some definitions of what makes an asset. These are the characteristics of an asset. It's something useful, valuable, tangible. It's a resource and it's recognizable. And then when it comes to money, it's something more specific. It has to be acceptable, has to be durable, has to be portable, small units, has to be scarce, divisible, and uniform. So money is really a subset of asset. And then you look at what is Bitcoin. So here's my definition of Bitcoin. It's really a digital asset. So prior to Bitcoin's invention 5 years ago, the only types of digital assets are like email addresses or website URLs, host names. So Bitcoin is a new digital asset that behaves like money. Okay, it's limited and scarce, decentralized, peer-to-peer, distributed. It's pseudo-anonymous. It's open source, free to use, and then also has many features of currency and money. So what is money? Let's just go through that quickly. We have examples of gold, of cattle, seashells, and even stones, right? Large stones outside in some island. And then we have paper money, right? Paper money's been around forever, it feels like. But today's money is basically all fiat currency. Have you guys heard of the term fiat currency? The first reaction I get in China is they think it's a car, fiat, the car. No, it's fiat. It's sort of derogatory term. It just means that governments declare if this money is legal tender, it has value by declaration, by fiat. It turns out this wasn't the case a century ago. So today's money, whether it's the US dollar, the Chinese RMB, or other dollar currencies, it's all fiat today. It's no longer backed by gold. It turns out in the early 1900s, the US dollar was backed by gold. So the notion of gold certificates, $1 bill was 1/20th of an ounce. I have some props. Let me see. So what I have here is 1/20th of an ounce. So here's a dollar, and this is 1/20th of an ounce of gold. This happens to be a China Panda. I don't know if you can the camera zoom in. So this is 1/20th of an ounce. Do you know how much this is worth today? Roughly $60. That's right. So 1 ounce is about $1,200. So if you give me 60 or more dollars, I might give you this piece. But it used to be that one piece of this you can go to the bank and get one of these guys. And then if you have $20, you get 1 ounce of gold. Now, not so easy so much. So, oh yeah, it was on the screen, right? So paper money is no longer backed by physical assets. That's good or bad. But it only started in 1971. And in essence, the fiat currency regime has only been around for 42 years, which is a small sliver of whole of humanity. So everything before that, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, they used money that was more physical and tangible, about gold, silver, and so on. So today's bank, you know the history, banks came from being depositories for gold and silver. So what's the problem with fiat currency? We know about increasing money supply in the US. They use a fancy term called QE. A QE is an acronym for a fancy word called quantitative easing, which essentially just means printing money. So, this is not happening only in the US, but also in China, Japan, Europe. Everyone's printing money. And if the whole world prints money at the same pace, guess what happens? We don't feel it, because if you exchange US dollars for euros, for Japanese yen, for Chinese RMB, if they're all increasing at the same pace, then people don't feel it. So that's what's happening in the last 5 years since the financial crisis. So government CPI numbers are notoriously underreported, underreporting true inflation. So for example, I was in San Francisco today. I parked my car for 45 minutes. They charged me $12. $12, 15 years ago when I was at Stanford, could buy me a lot of big lunch and stuff. How much does lunch cost these days at Stanford? How much? $12. Wow. Well, anyways, you know what I mean by inflation. So, recent example, last decade, a country called Zimbabwe had hyperinflation. So I was actually born in Africa in a country called Ivory Coast, but thankfully not Zimbabwe. But anyway, Zimbabwe had hyperinflation. This banknote is, what is it? 10 or 100 trillion dollars. I'll show you the what I mean by that. So they started, with $5, $10, $20 Zimbabwe notes, and this is very similar to US dollars, topping out 100, and they started having 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, and then, $100,000, and then it goes to $500,000, 1 million, 5 million. At that point, it's like, forget it, just keep going, right? So 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, and then I think they stopped here, $100 trillion. It's a little crazy. So when you have a newspaper article, front page list, you don't even count the number 0. You just know it's ridiculous. So we got starving billionaires on the street. We have 3 eggs that cost 100 billion Zimbabwe dollars. And this guy, I don't know if he's moving. It all depends on what kind of bill he has, right? If these are all $100 trillion notes, then I guess he's rich. But otherwise, this is a poor guy. So how does it affect real life, right? In China, it's the same thing's happening. So these slides were made for China. So inflation has been decent. These were the early, these are 50 cent, 1 RMB, 2 RMB. And this is the old version of 100 RMB. This is the new version. 100 RMB is about 15 US dollars today. This is their largest note. And the analogy I use is how much did eggs cost? So in the 1980s, you can get 100 eggs. So you can get 1,000 eggs with 100 RMB. And then about 10 years later, you can only get 300 eggs. And today, 100 RMB can get you 100 eggs. So the question is, what happens in 20 years? Can you still buy as many eggs? Chicken eggs, right? So I'll talk quickly about Bitcoin, and then I'll wrap up these slides and go to about China. So by the way, if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'm speaking pretty fast going through these. So researchers have been studying digital currency for a long, long time. I'm sure even Stanford Computer Science Department, they've been talking about or studying this. And the problem is double spending, right? If you think about physical goods you can give to each other, and the attributes of me giving a physical good to someone else, let's say it's this piece of gold coin. Where is it? I lost it. No. So small, If I give this to someone, then I no longer have it. They have it by possession. But as you know, in this digital age, files can be transferred and copied. Emails are sent and copied. There's some seats over here in this area. And the problem is, how do you prevent someone from copying and pasting, digital currency or notes. So this is the topic of double spending. It's a very interesting research problem, and it's never been solved until Bitcoin came along, because digital information can be easily copied. That's a fundamental problem. So 5 years ago, this guy Satoshi Nakamoto, this is a pseudonym. We don't know who he is, and I am not Satoshi, by the way. Just people ask, "Am I Satoshi?" I'm not Satoshi. If I were, I wouldn't be here. So that's what he said. Yeah, more on that later. So he published a paper. It was actually September, October. What is it? Late 2008, 5 years ago exactly. And it's the first viable electronic digital cash. It solved the double spend problem. And the way they did it was using global ledger. So global ledger is where they keep information globally distributed on all computers, keep track of how many accounts have how many Bitcoins. Okay? So published it by 2008, Satoshi, first viable decentralized digital currency. It has all these features. It has a cap on how many Bitcoins. It's distributed peer-to-peer. We talked about that. And then I'll keep going. So the software itself was released almost 5 years ago in January 2009. So next month will be the 5-year anniversary of Bitcoin. So at that time, there were no Bitcoins in existence. And then it has an algorithm to generate these Bitcoins, and it's given away for free to people who participate in the mining process. So right now, as of today, there's a little over 12 million. It's open source, free to use, very secure, uses high-grade encryption, but same public-private key technologies that we're familiar with on the internet. Okay? Very transparent. All transactions are public. All ledgers are public, so everybody can see what's going on. And then pseudo-anonymous. The difference is that account numbers are not linked to real people's names. So you have Bitcoin accounts that have Bitcoins in them. You don't know who has it, but at least what's in there, how it got there, who sent it, and how it's got sent and how much is all visible. So here's a symbol. The B with the line through it. The interesting thing is, you know where they borrowed this from? You know what currency they borrowed this symbol from? This is a side story. Where?
Thai baht.
Thailand. So they borrowed this symbol from Thailand. The US dollar has the S with the line through it. The euro has the E with the line through it. And so on and so forth. So the side story is that of all the countries in the world, the only one that's come out to criticize Bitcoin is Thailand. It's a true story. The central bankers say, "Oh, Bitcoin's bad." So I wonder if it's to do with the symbol. Anyway, so circulation is capped at 21 million. I'll explain that a little bit. Yes, please.
Bitcoin's only 5 years old, and current circulation is half of the total.
Yes, I'll tell you about that.
I guess how come it's going to take another 130 years to get the rest of the way?
Exactly, I'll tell you about that. So, so it's growing at 150 per hour. So as we speak, over the course of the next hour, there will be 150 new Bitcoins created out of thin air, and then that's a rate of 3,600 a day. And then it takes 130 years to get to 21 million. And then you ask, wouldn't it take much sooner? It wouldn't take, wouldn't it be much faster than 130 years? The reason is that actually the speed at which the Bitcoins come out actually slow down over time. Every 4 years, it slows down by half. So it used to be, 4 years ago, it used to be 50 Bitcoins per 10 minutes, 300 per hour, 7,200 per day. So now it's half of that. In 4 years, it will be half of this. In 4 years after that, it will be another half of that, and so on, until very, very small. So that's how it reaches 21 million. Okay.
Out of thin air. What do you mean by that? Out of
Yeah,
thin air?
I'll explain that. I'll explain that in the later slide. You got a question over there? Okay. So how does Bitcoin work? So regular bank accounts. You all have bank accounts, right? So the U.S. does not have an underbanking problem. But do you spend all your money? Do you spend your whole paycheck every month? I've heard that Americans spend all their paycheck. So that's how, so that's why when I see, zero for your bank account balance, I don't know if it's a start banking account balance or whether that's your current bank account balance. But anyway, so this is in RMB, yuan. But the idea is when you deposit money to your bank, you put in the cash. They don't track the serial numbers of the cash. They just say, oh, we'll keep track of it, $1,000, dollars or whatever. And then when you withdraw, you're just minus 300 and you're left with 700, right? So that's called a ledger system, okay? For those of you who are accountants. But these ledgers are kept privately by the bank. and then only known by the bank. Okay, but Bitcoin is stored in the public ledger. What happens is this information is stored repeatedly, copied everywhere around the internet for the whole world. So many copies. That's why it's called distributed. And same thing. We got bank account numbers. We got Bitcoin account numbers, and then in each Bitcoin account, there's the number of Bitcoins. Okay, so in this case, Bitcoin accounts are not just numbers but letters. So this would be an example of a Bitcoin account. This long string of numbers and letters, uppercase, lowercase, and so on. And the same thing, you start with the balance, 0, and then you put some Bitcoins in there, you take some Bitcoins out, and you keep track of how much you have. So that's why in the digital world, Bitcoins don't exist by themselves, unlike real money. Bitcoin only exists as a number in an account, as a ledger. Does that make sense? So when we ask how many Bitcoins you have, you don't actually have the Bitcoins. What you do is you have access to account numbers that have Bitcoin in them. It's a small distinction if you care. Please.
Bitcoin. What you talk about mining?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that later. So in the world, there's only 3 ways to get Bitcoins today. The first way is the mining process. I think I'll come back to that. It's the same question. I'll come back to that. Bitcoin is just a public. Okay, so we'll just and then it uses public-private key. So the Bitcoins in a Bitcoin account are locked by a password, if you will, a very long password, and that's like the private key to the Bitcoin address account. Okay. So a wallet is a terminology. It's computer science people came up with these terms. I didn't come up with these. So a wallet is like a collection of Bitcoin accounts that you put in your computer. Okay, so you have to keep that secret. Anyways, compared to fiat currency, I remember your questions, and we'll come back to that. Compared to fiat currency, Bitcoin has a hard limit of 21 million. However, it has many more decimal places. So can you think of a currency that has 2 decimal places?
US dollar.
US dollar. Can you think of a currency that has 0 decimal places?
Japanese yen.
Japanese yen, that's right. Can you think of something that has 8 decimal places? Bitcoin. And what? Oh, Ripple. Yeah. Okay. So crypto, same class. So it's not controlled by government. Okay. That's very important. So not controlled by government. It is issued by the people running the program, and it's worldwide. It crosses all cultures, all language, all countries, all barriers. So it runs on the internet. Anonymous transactions, very low transaction fee, and also the notion of no chargeback, the notion of finality. So how many of you have businesses where you accept credit cards? Any business owners here? The notion, we have a few. Okay, so the notion, if you're a business, a restaurant, you take credit cards. If your customer pays by credit card, you're supposed to get that $40 for their lunch. But in reality, you'll find out a month later whether you get the money. Sometimes the bank calls you and say, oh, that was fraud. Sorry, we're not going to pay you. So there's a risk of taking a credit card. That's why they charge such high fees and so on. So with Bitcoin, once you accept the Bitcoin, once you have proof you got it, it's sure thing. There's no risk of not getting it. And there's no such thing as a fake Bitcoin because everything can be authenticated. So from that perspective, merchants really like accepting Bitcoins. Open source peer-to-peer. So conclusion, quickly, 3 things, okay? We got the asset value aspect. So the key notion here is Bitcoin, because of its limited supply and its functions and properties, like no counterparty risk, it makes it really a valuable asset. The second thing is it has high integrity because of the transparent nature, decentralized global network. The notion of it's open source and open for inspection. So everybody could go inspect the security aspect of it. And lastly, it's very secure and safe because of the high-grade encryption. So Bitcoin itself is very secure, but once you have Bitcoins, you have to keep track of your private keys. You don't want to lose it. It's like if I give you like 5 kilograms of gold, you don't want to just leave it on your living room counter, right? You want to lock it away in a safe. So it turns out Bitcoin is very much like gold. It's an electronic version of gold with many properties. And now let me run over some prices, and I'll talk about the mining aspect. So how many of you heard about Bitcoins in 2011? Wow, I'm impressed. Did you guys buy it back then? See, if you bought it, you wouldn't be here, right? You'd be like vacationing somewhere. So I did not buy any Bitcoins either, so too bad. But back in 2011, there was a bubble. right? People call it the Bitcoin bubble of 2011. So it went from a few dollars, under $1 or $2. For those of you who remember, those are good old days. And then it went all the way up to $30, and it came crashing down. And we were like, oh, see, this is virtual currency, just for kids, forget about it. So it ended up being $10. And that's when my brother introduced me to Bitcoin. I started mining it. I'll tell you about that later. So it peaked over $30. And then this year, I got involved, and no, it's not because of me, but no, I got involved around here, started buying, and I told the rest of the world, please buy, and then, no, that's a joke also. People think it's a Ponzi scheme, but it's not. So, so the price did indeed keep going up. This is a US dollar chart. So by April this year, how many of you bought Bitcoins this year, around March, April? So there was a Cyprus event, where the government says, oh, you banks with your money, let me just take a big chunk out of it. And people got all worried about putting money in banks. So that's what triggered the Bitcoin stuff. And in April is when the mainstream media started covering it. So it peaked out at about $265 on a big Bitcoin exchange. And then guess what happened? It popped, right? So it popped and it came back down to about $100. So it went up, like near vertical, comes back down. But you'll notice this time, by going from $20, $30 to $260 and coming back down, this looks like a bubble, right? Looks like the dot-com bubble crash of the 1999 or 2000. But what happens is the previous bubble in 2011 looks like a small speed bump. In comparison, I mean, it was a bubble too, but it's much smaller. It's like almost like fractal behavior. You guys study fractals in computer science. Anyways, so this is interesting. So I was like, hey, this might keep happening. So sure enough, later this year, it went up again. This time it's the Chinese people buying it, and I was involved. I'm guilty. So I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So prices hovered around $100 this summertime, the summer doldrums, and it went up. And then by late September, I'll tell you about what our company did. But the prices kept going up. So now, what do you think is going to happen after October? Do you guys know the price of Bitcoin today? It's a little crazy. So I'll show you the next slide. This is where it gets killer. So it turns out, in the last 2 months, it went from $200 US to $1,100. Okay, crazy growth here, and it makes the April bubble look like a speed bump, and makes the 2011 look like ants. I mean, this was the same curve you saw in like 4 slides ago. That was very steep, and so this is kind of crazy, huh? So you saw this bubble, and it's not quite a bubble after all when you see this big guy. And the question is, what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 5 years? Will it come crashing down and that's it? Or will there be bigger and bigger price increases that make this guy look like this guy? Interesting question. So I know what I think, but I don't want to bias your thinking. Okay, so some common misunderstandings. So Bitcoin does not replace government fiat currency. So the proposal is not to say the whole world would get rid and burn all the dollars, burn all the euros, and get rid of it. That's not the point, okay? So anyone who says Bitcoin will never replace fiat currency, I'm like, you're right. It won't. And then secondly, goods and services don't need to be priced in Bitcoin. So even when I went parking or if you have lunch somewhere, you don't have to, the pricing doesn't have to show Bitcoin price. But what we're saying is, in theory, you could pay for it using Bitcoins, right? And then lastly, the security aspect, people say Bitcoin is not safe and so on. But the reality is Bitcoin itself is very safe. It's just that you want to safely store it yourself. It's like gold itself it has strong integrity. It's not going to melt or disappear or vaporize. So gold is very solid and stable, just like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is very solid and stable. Just make sure you take good care of it. So it's the default. So let's say I put this right here, right? I put it right here. And I walk out to the bathroom, you guys talk, and then I come back half an hour later, it's gone. So whose fault is that? Is it me or is it the gold? It's me. Same thing, right? If I have Bitcoin, I have Bitcoin right here, by the way. This is now worth $1,000. You can't have it. So if you take it, then you're stealing it. But let's say I have this Bitcoin here, I leave it here, and then I can't find it later. It's my fault. The fault is not because of the Bitcoin, okay? So one more thing. this people ask. People are worried about Bitcoin, whether it has value. What can you buy with it? So the analogy is, so this is a misunderstanding. What I want to get across is, Bitcoin has value not because of what you can buy from it. It's the other way around. Once Bitcoin has value, you will be able to buy things with Bitcoin. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Yeah, so you will be buy things with Bitcoin once Bitcoin has inherent value and a market value. Okay, so here's a chart for you, for those of you who didn't follow what I was saying. Has unique properties. We went over that. It's scarce and limited. No misspellings. Okay, good. I spelled it wrong last time. And has market value and market price. So think about that. It has features that make it valuable. Then it has value. With value comes a market price, right? For example, what is this? A bottle of Safeway water. Does it have unique features that make it valuable? Yes. Does it have market value? Yes. Does it have a market price? Does it? It has a sell price, but does it have a bid price? Will someone offer me money to take it off my hand? Does it? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yeah, if you're thirsty, yes. So it has market price, and then are people willing to accept it? So once it has market price, then people are willing to accept it, because then they can say, okay, I could sell it, I could trade it, right? If you can think of this gold, right? For most of you out here, except if you work, unless you're working in the chip industry where you can actually turn the gold into chips, most of you have no use for gold. Am I right? What you do with it is you might sell it to someone else who will pay you cash for it. So once it has value, yes, question.
But gold is beautiful.
So is water. This is like transparent, you know?
Water keeps you alive though. But like,
Yeah,
what
gold
does
doesn't
a
keep you alive.
Bitcoin
There you
do?
go.
Yeah, but you know, you can make it into a ring or give it to
You're
someone.
absolutely right. So in the end, it's to each his own, to each her own, to each his own. Okay. So whether it's gold, water, or Bitcoin, some people will find gold more valuable, more attractive than others, and same with Bitcoin. Some people are bigger believers of Bitcoin. Some people will be smaller believers of Bitcoin. But the point is, once enough people think it has value, it would have a market price. Today, Bitcoin already has a market price. This thing here, you know, it's made of copper or tin, whatever, but it has a password on the back to the account number. And this is worth over $1,000 today. A little crazy. So people, once it has market value, people are willing to accept it. If I go to Safeway today and I say, hey, I tell the cashier, I want 10 cases of this water, and I'm going to give you this. And if he's smart, he would say, yeah, I'll take that, you know. So when they start accepting it, then people can, what? Buy things with it. And when more people can buy things with Bitcoin, what happens? The cycle goes back and there's more value. So that's the value chain for Bitcoin. Okay, future Bitcoin cannot be stopped because unless you turn off the internet, it's peer-to-peer, it's kind of like BitTorrent. It crosses all firewalls and stuff like that. So it cannot be stopped by the government or by a country. It cannot be confiscated because it's just numbers you can store in your head. You can't confiscate it. It turns out, there's a country that's actually confiscated gold from its people. Have you heard of that? Yeah, United States, that's right. This very country at one point confiscated all gold, made gold illegal. So even if they make Bitcoin illegal, they won't be able to confiscate it, okay? And lastly, we're saying that Bitcoin exchanges will be more and more regulated by government. So some of us know it better than others. We're facing the same problem. We'll chat afterwards. Especially today, yeah. What a crazy day. I'll share with you that in a little bit. Question?
Why can't U.S. bank accounts be linked to most exchanges, and then why can Coinbase do it but no one else?
What's the last question?
Coinbase can link to U.S. bank accounts, but no one else can.
That's not a question I can address in this talk. I'll talk to you afterwards about that. Thank you.
Bitcoins from that website?
Yes, so they confiscate Bitcoins from some person who was operating an illegal business. So if someone were to operate an illegal business selling marijuana and cocaine, and then the who would it be? The DEA comes in and busts them and takes all their money and all their drugs, you know. So it'll be similar to that. But the problem is not with the money. The problem is not with the cash. The problem is with the operator of the business. They were doing something illegal, right? So this is the year of Bitcoin. more users, more startups, etc. Okay, so quickly, let me go through mining. Okay, so it turns out that how are bitcoins created? So let me, before I do that, it turns out you can only get bitcoins one of three ways. I want you guys to, anyone sleeping here? No? Okay. So guess, which three ways can you get bitcoins?
Mining.
What's number one? Raise your hand so we can call you out. Number one is mining, I heard that. What else? Raise your hand.
Buying.
Mining? Buying! There we go, that's the second method. What's the third method?
Sell something.
Sell something, barter. Give me something, I'll give you, actually, will I? What kind of computer do you have? I'll trade you.
The MacBook RAM.
Yeah, I'll take that. Okay, so buying, mining, or barter, trading it, okay? That's only three ways you can do it. So for Bitcoin exchanges, what we specialize in is allowing people to buy and sell Bitcoins. Okay, and then the other companies that allow people to do mining. But what I'm going to talk about now is the mining part quickly, and then we're going to go to the slide about China. Okay, so the process of obtaining Bitcoins is called mining. You obtain it for free. So let me backtrack a little bit. So the guy who designed it, created it, decided to set a limit by 21 million. We remember that? He set a hard limit, 21 million. Now, how do you think he came up with that? Was that just a random number, or was that through consensus? So actually, it doesn't matter how you came up with it. What's important is the limit is set, okay? So it's kind of like if there's a skyscraper, before you build it, the architect decides how many floors, how high, how tall it should be. So that decision's been made in the architecture design of the skyscraper. And then you start building it one floor by one floor by one floor, okay? So my point is the height of the building was set before the building was built. Same thing. The number of Bitcoins was set before Bitcoins was sent out, okay? So if you're the inventor of Bitcoin, you decide on 21 million. Who should get the 21 million Bitcoins? How many choices are there? Give me some examples. Raise some hands.
Everyone.
Okay, so who was that? Okay, everyone. What do you mean by everyone? Like one per person in the world. Okay, that's one way. You give it evenly to all the citizens of the world. What's another way?
Lottery.
A lottery. You give it out to whoever wants to come to the lottery. That's the second way. What's the third way?
Make the protocol extensible.
Make a what?
Make the protocol extensible.
Make the protocol extensible. That doesn't answer my question. Who should get the 21 million Bitcoins? So I'll tell you, if it were me, I could say, oh, give it all to me first. Right? That's right. So basically, I take all the Bitcoins and then I'll see who are my good friends and bad friends and I'll give to some. But if I did that, my coin probably wouldn't be successful. So he didn't do that. So what he decided to do was this. He decided to give all the coins away for free to the whole world. However, there's a mechanical process. Basically, there's logistics. How do you decide who's alive, who's not? Another way to do is give it to the government, right? Give it to the United States government, or give it to the People's Republic of China. So that wouldn't work either, right? So he decided to give it away for free to everyone, and he decided to do it at a time where half the coins are given away in the first 4 years, and then the next 4 years, half of that are given away, half the remaining ones are given away, and then every 4 years, fewer and fewer and fewer Bitcoins are given away. But it's given away for free. And the way you get it for free is you bring a computer, you run a program, and you do one calculation. For every one calculation, you get a lottery ticket. So it's a free lottery for everyone. 25 Bitcoins are given away every 10 minutes. That's today. It turns out 4 years ago, they gave out 50 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. Okay? You got that? So it's a free lottery. It really is free. So if you guys heard about Bitcoin 5 years ago, 4 years ago, you could have run this program. You just press lottery ticket after lottery ticket. I'll do a live example. I'm Satoshi Nakamoto. I put this program out here. For the first lottery, I raised my hand. All right, no other. Okay, I win. All right, I got my first 50. That's what happened. He got his first 50. Second 10 minutes. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay, got it. So it's one of us. You know, you get 1/5 chance. Okay, the third time. Hey, more people. Okay, the fourth time. The fifth time. The sixth time, I'm going to raise 2 hands. What the heck? You guys, too many of you out there. The sixth time, what happens? So everybody's raising 2 hands. And then what's happening is if you have more computers, you press the button twice. You have more computers come on. So the more computers you bring to raise hands for you, the more chances you have at winning the lottery. Does that make sense? And this is what the game is about, the mining game. So today, you hear about people buying specialized computers and plugging them in just to, play this. Okay, I'm serious. I'm really serious about this. It's a big business. So you play the lottery, run the program, guess the number. This is where the crypto hash stuff comes in, and you get the prize. Okay. So the difficulty. So it turns out, if there are more people playing the game, what happens? Your chance of winning goes down, right? Yes. No. Yes. Yes. Leslie. No. Yes. Okay, so what they did was they ran programs on their CPUs, and then it turned to GPUs. These are the graphics chips, and then they made special chips to do it. They're called ASICs. So it's gotten harder and harder, and people join into pools. So what happens is, if I'm raising 5 hands and I can't win, what happens? I tell my whole Stanford computer science department, hey, let's all do this together. Let's join as one team. We'll raise hands together, and we try to win the lottery. And if we do win it, we'll split it evenly amongst ourselves, and that's called a mining pool. So everyone's doing that now. So I got into this 2011. My brother introduced me to it. My first mining rig, ta-da! I spent $1,000 on that. 2 power supplies, 4 graphics cards, 200. So how fast it raised hands? It raised hands 220 million times a second. So every second, like that, 220 million times a second. Okay, no joke, no joke. So after the course of 10 minutes, the prize comes out. Did I win? Nope. There are way too many people raising hands out there. So I didn't win. But anyways, I joined these mining pools. So I got fractions of a Bitcoin. So over 3 months, I earned about 20 Bitcoins. At the time, it was $300. I was like, this is not profitable. Turn it off. So I turned it off. What a waste. So today, this year, I got excited again. My brother called me. He's like, Bobby, there's this new thing called ASIC chips. These are chips designed for Bitcoin mining, made in China. And now it's 85 times faster. So I got one of these boxes under my desk. It cost me $1,500. There's like a 5-month waiting list. And anyways, at one point I was earning 2 Bitcoins a day. 2 Bitcoins a day. So you think, wait, I thought the prize was 25 Bitcoins per ticket, right? Then how do I get something less than that? So it's the mining pool. By doing the mining pool, we win once every so often, and then we divvy it up. So I got my share, which is 2 Bitcoins a day. So that was the peak. That was my absolute peak. I got 2 Bitcoins a day. At the time, it was $100, so it was that. Okay, so this was 72 gigahash, 72 billion times a second. The other guy was 220 million times a second. So this race is going faster. It's like the arms race, like super fast, okay? So anyways, so this answered the question. So at the time, we were making, difficulty will rise, okay? So that's it. Bitcoin is, buy some Bitcoins. And so let me take some questions, and I'll talk about China. We have half an hour left?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, question.
The difficulty is rising. Why not just abandon Bitcoins and go to Litecoins or the next new coin?
You could. It's personal choice. Bitcoin right now is still the most desired of all cryptocurrencies. It's because it's the original. And it turns out, of the ones you mentioned, these guys are all, there's a whole bunch. There's about 50 or 60 cryptocurrencies. You could do your own. Are you a computer science student?
No.
Do you have a computer connection?
Yes.
You can go download Bitcoin source code, change the name. What's your name?
Wayne.
Wayne. Go call Wayne Coin. Publish it, send an email to everyone else, say, come use it, and maybe we'll use it. But there are millions of people using Bitcoin today. So the question is, will they use yours or will they use Bitcoin? So that's the question. All right, question in the back.
Regulation-wise, right? If you want to start a new startup, which country would you recommend to?
Which culture?
Which country?
Which country? China.
Regulation-wise. Regulation,
Wait, what wise?
Regulation.
Regulation-wise.
Yeah.
Not Thailand, not the U.S. I don't know. That's a long question. I'll talk about that at the end. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, over there.
What do you think have you seen a killer app for Bitcoin in China, or what do you think it will be? Because I'd say one of the challenges of the U.S. has been people are excited, but it's not clear what dollars.
We're still very early. Killer apps, people think exchanges was a killer business. It is, it isn't. There's more to come. There's many, many more to come. So if you're interested, just stay in tune with the market. There's a lot more killer apps coming. Yeah, question?
Why is Litecoin in red?
Because my brother invented it. No, really. My brother, Charles Lee, he created Litecoin. So he did what Wayne was going to do. He went out there, pulled the source code, changed it to Litecoin, changed a few things, and published it. And for those of you who know, it's now pretty popular. It's the second most popular cryptocurrency. Yeah, so he's the guy who got me into Bitcoin, and he didn't like it. He didn't even tell me about it when he launched like that. He was like doing this himself, and he didn't tell me about it. Okay, question? Yeah, here first and then the back. Yeah.
So how do fractional bitcoins, where does it appear from?
Fractional bitcoins, each bitcoin has 8 decimal places, so you can send 0.5, 0.55, 0.005 to anyone you want.
But when you mine them, what do you get? Do you get
You mine
one
anytime one price comes out, it's 25 bitcoins. And then whoever gets it can then split it up to however many pieces they want. Okay? Question in the back.
At the Bitcoin exchange, how do you earn money?
Okay, I'll tell you about that in the next slide, okay? So, one more question and I'll change slides. Go ahead. Sir, in the back.
Do you have any idea of how many people hold Bitcoin?
No idea. We can tell you how many accounts there are. Do we know if there's any experts here how many accounts there are? How many Bitcoin addresses on blockchain? It's in the hundreds of millions or billions, but we don't know how many people are behind that. Yeah. Okay. So we'll spend maybe another 15 minutes talking about Bitcoin in China, and then we'll take questions and answers, and I'm here until whenever you guys want to ask more questions. Okay. So I'm a CEO, co-founder of BTC China. We started out being a local regional operator. We still are a local regional operator in China. But our traffic has gone up a lot, so now we're getting some worldwide attention. So quick history, the site was launched by my 2 co-founders in June of 2011, and then I joined this year as CEO and co-founder in April, and at that time we became the world's number 5 largest Bitcoin company. By July we established a company. We went out fundraising for VC money. We set up headquarters office in Shanghai, and by then we climbed to world number 3 position. And in late September, we eliminated all trading commissions. So that was industry first to spur the Bitcoin market in China. And then by early November, we've risen to world number 1 position in Bitcoin volume trading. So that's and later in November, 2 weeks ago, we announced our Series A funding by Lightspeed Venture Partners. That's our VC money. And today we essentially expanded really fast from 2 to 25 employees. And our trading volume has gone up. So to give you some perspective, so the line is the price and the bars are the volume, okay? So we saw pretty stable price and volume all summer long, right? You remember these crazy charts I showed you? That was because I compressed the time. But when you spread it out from June to September, it was pretty flat, the price, okay? The volume was pretty flat. And then when we announced the no commission, our volume took off. Okay, that's a bar. And then what happened? The price took off as well. So this is weird. If you think about economics, what thing gets more expensive as more people buy it? It's usually the other way around. Usually when price comes down, volume goes up. Right? If a car, if they reduce the price for a model of a car, what happened? It spurs the sales go up. Right? But this is sort of the opposite. What you're seeing here is the volumes go up, and the price goes up.
Stock market share.
Stock market share. So it's something very limited in quantity. Something that has true limitations in quantity. That's what you see, right? When you see the volume go up first, and then the price go up, okay? So just by coincidence, on the day we announced our VC funding, Bitcoin price doubled. So I remember we were preparing the press release on Saturday, Sunday. We're going to release it Monday morning. At the time, over the weekend, it was 2,500 yuan, RMB. And by the time it hit the press in the morning, it was 3,000 yuan. It went for 4,000, it went to 5,000. By evening time, we couldn't sleep. My wife and I were in the bed, we couldn't sleep. It was like 6,000, and the next morning was 7,000. So that one day, November 18th, was a key day. It went up like double the price. And that's probably when you guys all heard about it. Question?
Yeah, so you obviously overtook Mt. Gox at some point. In
early November.
Okay. Now, they're obviously known for having, set the industry standard in terms of fees, and there's been a lot of complaints around the. You say you have no commissions. How do you see that working out long term? Is that sustainable?
Yeah. We'll see. I can't comment on what we will do in the future, but the example I'll point out is in the past. If Google, Hotmail, and Twitter all charged per search, per email sent, or per Twitter sent, the internet would not be where it is today. Right? Not just that, but to spur the whole industry. and I think we've made a positive impact there. Right? If you think about if web search was paid, if Hotmail, Yahoo Mail, Gmail accounts were paid for, every email you sent had to be paid, I don't think the internet would be where it is today. If every Facebook like, if every Facebook message, if every Instagram thing was paid for, you had to pay for it, I don't think the internet would be where it is today. So I was up close and personal in front with the internet, 20 years ago out here in Silicon Valley. So our thinking was, that's why we went to raise the VC money. We want the long haul. We don't want the short-term profits. We want the long-term industry success for Bitcoin. So.
Do you trade a lot of dollars as well, or is that something?
We're strictly focused on the China market. So China RMB, strictly only China. Yeah. Okay. So more questions? Yes. One more.
You probably saw the article this week in The Economist, which basically says Bitcoin is a giant bubble. If you're a prudent investor, you would dump it now. What do you think of that?
I'll answer that question at the end. Okay. Hold that question. Very good question. Yeah. You want to sell me some Bitcoins? I'll take it.
I'll sell you some counterfeit ones.
Counterfeit ones. The good thing is there isn't counterfeit Bitcoin. So we did a user survey, customer survey. Who are our users? So quickly, we had about 45,000 responses, 15 days. We gave out an iPad. I say this because to be all fair and honest, right? Because if you think about it, surveys are never accurate, So in our case, we told people take the survey and there's a prize. So sometimes that skews the audience, but it is what it is. So here are the results. 90% male. So predominantly, we think our users are predominantly male. No, it's true. It's true. So where are all these female Bitcoin users? I don't know. And then young, 40, 30 age, predominantly. And then this is very interesting. Education level, very high level of education. So the national average in China is 27% holding a university degree. But in our user study, over 90% have had university, bachelor, master's, or even PhD degrees. So it's very, very high. It's a very well-educated crowd, people who understand Bitcoin. And why are they buying it? So the predominantly is for investment, either long-term or short-term. I put them in the same bucket. It's basically two sides of the same coin. And then very few people are buying Bitcoin today in China for the purpose of spending it. So this is the behavior in the Western world. We're seeing this in the US. People use Bitcoin to buy things, pay for things. In China, this hasn't caught up yet. China is still in the early stages. People primarily buying it for the appreciation value potential. Okay, and then investment level experience. This is so it turns out the more experienced you are, the more you buy it for long-term holding. The least experienced you are in investing, sort of maybe by age or whatever, you're inexperienced. You're just speculating. You're just buying and selling and flipping it. Okay, this is what we're seeing in China. I guess this is intuitive. Here's an interesting slide. So 6 months ago or 8 months ago, predominantly Bitcoin was traded in US dollars. Of all the world's exchanges, most Bitcoins were traded in US dollars. And what we saw happen in the course of 6 months in China is that by November, there are more Bitcoins traded using RMB than in the US dollar. So this is pretty crazy. So, and then let's talk about why the adoption in China, why the fast adoption in China. These are the 4 reasons I cite. Some of these are more publicly known. China is a nation of savers, so high savings rate. Also very strong in math and science. A lot of Chinese people are good at math and science. They study math and science engineering. Bitcoin mining is very, very popular in China. All the electronics, all the chips, all the supply chain is all in China for mining. And then also the people in China are just eager to participate in anything new. So there's that wow factor, the it factor, okay? So nation of savers, so this is about the country, big GDP and people save for the rainy day, poor social care system, welfare system, underdeveloped financial sector. For all these reasons, people tend to want to save, okay? Undervalued currency and so on. Essentially, Bitcoin presents as a great opportunity to store value and to preserve spending power, purchasing power. Okay, I know you guys think it's crazy. You spend all your paycheck every month, right? Mostly. What's the joke? You guys, Americans spend more than their paycheck. Yeah, and how do you get the financing? Credit card and China. Yeah. A student debt. You take another home equity loan. I don't know. You mortgage your children, you know. So second thing is a nation of engineers, right? So in China, engineering doesn't have that stigma attached to it when you study engineering. In the U.S., you know, there's a term like geeks, you know, like nerds, you know. So I mean, I was computer science. I was an engineering student, so I know. It's not well at Stanford. It's okay. At Stanford, you know, there's the techies and the fuzzies, right? But a lot of people out in other universities get liberal arts degrees. So it turns out political and business leaders are much more likely to have engineering background in China. This is just a reflection of the society in China, right? So this is true at the national level, the government level, national, state, city level, and all that. So here's the next slide. So it turns out if you look at the background of the presidents of China, the leaders, the premiers, all three of these guys. Do you guys know these people? Yeah? No? Yes? Well, this is the guy in charge now, Chairman Xi Jinping, and this is his predecessor, Hu Jintao, and the one before is Jiang Zemin. So they all have engineering degrees. Electrical engineering, hydraulic engineering, chemical engineering. So imagine finding that at the White House or at the Senate or the House, right? So not very popular in the U.S. Oh, you know what they are in the U.S.? They're all lawyers. Okay, and that's why you have U.S. regulation on Bitcoin by lawyers. So that's the answer. Okay, so why do you purchase Bitcoin? So most of the other reasons is because they think it's a novelty. It's like, oh, it's something new. You know, we're bored. We just want to try something new. So they're buying Bitcoins. The it factor. Okay. So government regulation. So here's a caveat. The next few slides is a caveat. So it turns out on my flight over here, they said Bobby left the country, so let's put regulation in now. No, but it's sort of a joke. But that's what happened. I got on the plane, and then when I landed, there's a big news. In China, there's some regulation stuff going on. So I cannot comment on that yet because I haven't read the paper. I cannot officially comment on that. I'd be saying things wrong. So everything you see here is based on my thoughts, you know, from last week and before. Okay, so apologize for that, and please don't quote me in the press for anything I'm about to say about Chinese regulation. So they obviously. Well, I shouldn't even say that. Okay, but my point is, I'm not these guys, right? So they're in power. I'm just following what they say. So so there's optimism for Bitcoin in China. So it turns out the vice minister of the central bank made some positive comments. There's widespread coverage by CCTV, the state television channel, and so this is a guy, Yi Gang. He's a very powerful guy. He's the vice minister of the People's Bank of China, which is a central bank. He also runs the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. So he's the most knowledgeable and the most suitable person in the whole government to be commenting on and to be regulating Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin ever gets regulated in China, then they will go to him for his advice, and you know he'd be most likely the person to lead the effort. In fact, I think that's what's happened in the last 24 hours. So in November, he commented three things. Basically, he said the government cannot recognize Bitcoin's legal status as a currency in the near term, which is okay, which is to be expected, right? And then secondly is, however, he said in China, people should have the basic right to buy and sell Bitcoins. So essentially, it protects our business, which what we do is we allow people to buy and sell Bitcoin. So our business is now considered no longer in the blacklist; it's now in the white list of things that are approved, right? And with caveats, with conditions and rules and stuff like that. And then Bitcoin's very interesting, you know, so he will keep following it. So a lot of coverage in the state media, television, and so the future is bright, I think, for Bitcoin in China. And yeah, so a lot of Bitcoin trading in China. So that completes my prepared remarks. I'm happy to take more questions. We have about 15 minutes left, so it looks about right. Richard, you want to comment, jump in?
Actually, I want to ask you about the business model for the exchange.
Yes, okay.
You know,
yeah,
so how do you make your money?
Yeah, so let's cover that. So it turns out when we were charging trading commission, we're charging 0.3% one way. So if you buy Bitcoins, we charge you 0.3%. If you sell, we charge 0.3%. Mt. Gox, who is the person asked Mt. Gox? Mt. Gox charges 0.6%. So they're raking it in. They're making so much money, and we're making half as much money, but which was a lot. So we're making a lot of money back then. That's how we got VC funding. We told the VCs, hey, we're making a lot of money. Give me more money. So that happened, and so today we've actually eliminated trading commission, but we're investing for the long-term growth of the ecosystem. We want more Bitcoin users out there. We want the infrastructure to be more developed. That's why we're doing this. So we might be burning cash in the near term, but turns out what happened was we still charge a little bit when you withdraw money from the banking system. So there's some withdrawal fees that we do still charge in our exchange. So turns out, because the volumes have gone up 100 times, even based on those those really small withdrawal fees, that's like a lot of money. So November was actually quite profitable. It's like, wow, we didn't realize that. So November is a really profitable month, December and so on. So we're looking pretty good in terms of our financial model and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay. Question, yes.
Do you have any issues with fraud?
Fraud. Oh yeah, we do. We do. All kinds. People coming in pretending to be someone else. They want their money and stuff like that. Yeah, all kinds. All kinds. Well, what's missing with Bitcoin is the finality problem. If you initiate a bank transfer from A to B, and then later on they determine to be fraud, banks can reverse it. Right? The two banks, whether it's Wells Fargo, Bank of America, they can say, oh, that was fraud, we would reverse it. Same with credit card, right? If you get charged for something, there's fraud, we reverse it. Turns out Bitcoin, you can't. Once Bitcoin leaves account A and goes to account B, it's at the sole discretion of account B holder to do what they want to do with the Bitcoin. So you cannot reverse the Bitcoin. So that's both good and bad. In some scenarios, you want that. In other cases, in fraud activities, it's too bad. So when you have Bitcoin websites that get hacked and the Bitcoin gets stolen, then it's gone. It's out the door. The horses have left the barn. Yes. Okay. Question here.
Do you think there's a business opportunity to offer that as a service?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should start a Bitcoin startup, and you'll get funding if you can do that. Absolutely. Yes. Next. Yeah, back there.
On that same theme, what do you think are some of the most exciting Bitcoin startup ideas right now?
It's unlimited. The sky's the limit. I have more ideas than I can implement. So I encourage all of you to start Bitcoin companies. It's like, no, seriously. This is the new frontier. Like the ones you start, some might compete with me, but it's okay, right? It's like, imagine if the internet only had one Yahoo. And that was the whole thing. That was the only company for the internet. That would be bad. The internet would not be where it is today. So even I worked for Yahoo, it was good to have all these competing companies in the ecosystem. So there's many ideas,
Could you give a couple of examples?
No, I'd rather not, because then it'll give you an impression that I'm focused on some areas and not others. So I'd rather not. But you can find them online. There's tons of ideas. I'll chat with you offline, about that. Yes, question?
Have you thought about using like a market making to make money by predicting the bottom movement between sell
market maker,
yeah,
right? Like private trading, like what they call proprietary trading, right? So we use customers' money to trade. Yeah. That's a business model, right? You could do that, but we as an exchange, we're not doing that. But I know people who are doing that. There's arbitrage business, there's market making, there's there's algorithm trading and all that. Question there?
Let's go to the left.
Okay, last one there.
Could you share with us your long-term vision about the Bitcoin exchange? Do you see the long-term viability of the business, or do you see that it's just a window of time that you can earn money from this business?
I think it's long-term. It's like the internet. They talked about internet bubble, but reality is internet usage has gone up, and it will only keep going up. So yeah, question here.
What warnings could you foresee happening that would reverse Yuang's stance?
What? Sorry, what?
What could you see happening that would reverse Yuang's stance?
The U.S. stance?
Yuang,
Yigong.
Oh, Yigong.
His stance on what?
On it being okay and it being kosher for now, and you be on the whitelist?
I cannot comment on that. So it turns out in the last 12 hours, the government issued some rulings or some communique on Bitcoin. I haven't read that fully yet, so I don't want to comment on that information at this point.
I was going to ask you to comment.
I cannot, sorry. Yeah. I'd be speaking out of turn. Let me go study that, and then gather my thoughts and see the reaction, and then we'll comment on it. Yes, please.
Even if you can't comment on the regulations, it sounds like the regulations coming out was a bit of a surprise for you, or did you expect something to be coming out?
We're actually pro-regulation. This may come as a surprise to some of you. We operate in China market. We want the government to regulate the Bitcoin exchange business. And the reason is we're the leader. So we want to, to make this a more formal business, to have more rules in place so that we do things legitimately, we protect the customer's interests, we protect their funds. Otherwise, Bitcoin exchanges come up and go, they steal customers' money, they go out of business, they get hacked. So a lot of problems if it's not regulated. Yeah, question.
Other than like making transfers free, right?
Yes.
Did you guys do anything offline? Did you guys do anything else to like spur the adoption of Bitcoin?
Offline, not yet. We haven't done anything offline yet. Yes. Question over here? Yes.
Can you explain the difference between the exchanges and the price set at the exchange there and the bid ask?
I'm sorry, the difference between the bid ask?
No, between exchanges for bid ask.
Oh, you mean why are exchanges around have different pricing? Oh yeah, I can talk about that. So it turns out there are hundreds of exchanges, or maybe not hundreds, but tens of exchanges around the world. And they all have different prices. Some are higher, some are lower. And the reason is that's the natural market, right? The water here in Safeway in Mountain View or Palo Alto is at one price, but if you go to Los Angeles, different price. If you go to Boston, New York, it's a different price. The reality is, if it's cheaper here, in theory, you could buy the water here and ship it to New York City and sell it there for a higher price. But you incur, there's a reason why it's higher there.
Point.
It is, but remember, the audience is different, right? The source of the water is different, right? People who are selling it is different. The people buying it is different.
So I could buy on your exchange and sell on another exchange.
You could. That would be called the arbitrage business. Yeah. Question?
Like 10 years down the road, can you describe some ways Bitcoin's really changed the world?
10 years down the road. Wow. It's the classic stuff. You could. Let me put it this way. Bitcoin has the potential to be the first truly global unit of measurement for value. Think about this. And in the U.S., you guys are like, not you, but I'm also American, but we're like insulated. Well, what measuring system do we use? The American system, right? Where we talk about feet and inches, where we talk about pounds, and what's the other thing we use? In China and the rest of the world, they all use the metric system, right? So the metric system consists of temperature in Celsius, consists of length in meters, consists of weight in kilograms, consists of, what else? Yeah. But the point is, the whole world uses the same system of measurement, okay? Whereas the U.S. is different. So if you look at currencies today, the world has, 100 different currencies. So the only pseudo-currency that's global is the U.S. dollar. So, the U.S. dollar, I told you it's been inflating. People are like questioning it and stuff like that. So Bitcoin potentially could become, the standard where all currencies are pegged against it, if not. So that's a potential. I'm not going to say it will happen, but certainly it holds that promise. Yeah, question in the back?
I have a quick question about like the private key. If you're selling or exchanging a fraction of your Bitcoin, then does it create a new private key for the people?
Yeah. What happens is, remember, Bitcoin's only held in Bitcoin accounts. So if you need a private key to move the Bitcoin out of the account, and every time you move it, you have to move the whole thing out. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like you have a cake in your refrigerator. If I want to eat the cake, I got to open the fridge with your private key, and then what I have to do is I take the whole cake out first, and then I cut it. You never cut the cake in the fridge, right? You take the cake out, and then you cut it. If you have one cake or half a cake, you take it out, and you cut however much you want. And then what you can do is, because the fridge is where your account, and your private key is the opening of the fridge, then you have two pieces. You have the piece you want to eat, and the piece that's left over. What you do then is you could take the piece you want to eat, you give it to whoever you want to give it to. The piece that's left over, you can either put it back in the same fridge, or you can put it in the new fridge. So most people put it into the new account. So that was a long analogy. But it was accurate. It was accurate.
Go back to the left.
Left, yes, over here.
What do you think about the other digital currencies, and do you think you're going to support them in the future?
I love all the other currencies, but I can't comment on what we'll do in the future. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
I have a question for this next question. So you, can you like online access to your exchange?
Online access, website? Yeah, we have a website.
Exchange online without any cost, right? API.
Oh, API. Like machine? Yes, we have API access as well. Is that what you mean?
You can buy Bitcoin
Yes.
in New York and sell.
That's right. That's right. They do that. They do that. You can buy from Mt. Gox, sell it on BTC China. You can buy from Bitstamp, sell it on Mt. Gox. You can do all that. Yeah, arbitrage. Yeah, but you're not the first to think of it.
So what advantage does Bitcoin carry for governments, not for individuals? Because governments, sovereign governments, have always viewed this as a sovereign right. And currency,
That's right.
as you know, is used for control.
That's right.
Control of your imports and
That's
exports
right.
and other.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
why should a government cede that control?
Because it's coming. It's coming. I'll tell you, it's like the internet. It used to be that when I grew up in Africa, I'll tell you a story. Ivory Coast, the country, it was relatively stable. But you know what was the most important thing in the country? You know where they actually had armed guards? It was at the television station. That was a place in the whole city where they had armed guards. The television station had a tower. So controlling the communication, the broadcast of the TV station, of the radio, was so critical for maintaining order and government, you know. So that was Ivory Coast. In the US, we have free press and all that stuff. But pre-internet, communication was very important to countries, right? But now the internet is here, even in China today, with the Great Firewall of China. The reality is information is becoming more free. People, you and me, ordinary citizens can now broadcast and tell our stories, right? Whether it's a Twitter, it's the, you know, it's the WeChat, or whether it's called a WhatsApp, or, you know, things like that. Does that make sense? So it's coming. I don't want to use the phrase unstoppable. I didn't say that, unstoppable, but you get the idea. Yeah. Okay. In the back. Did you? Who? Me. Okay, you first, and then you. Yeah.
Okay. So to earlier point, if I can buy money from BTC China and then I sell my Bitcoin on Gas, that means I can transfer money renminbi from China outside of China without a limitation. Because right now we have a limitation of transfer my renminbi outside of China.
Yes, I could have done that too. I took a plane. I flew to San Francisco. I could have carried a lot of money with me.
But right? You have a limitation.
And then they asked me today how much you brought. I was like $600 US. Okay, you go. So the point is, there's laws and then there's breaking laws, right? So laws are there and you can always break them, but you have to face the consequence, right? Am I right?
The situation I mentioned right now is a consideration of violation of Chinese law.
I'm not a lawyer, but I would urge you to look at the law more carefully before.
Model like money transfer or money remittance across countries.
Go for it. No, I should not have said it, go for it. I should have said, go study it first.
Bitcoin exchange makes evading capital controls easier?
No, yeah, that's a good question. So we are not in the business of making evading capital easier. I want to make that very clear. We're going to have anti-money laundering rules in place. We're going to have KYC in place, and that's part of the regulation in terms of regulating Bitcoin exchanges. That's true in China. It's going to be true it's already true in the US. It's going to be true in Thailand, every country. I mean, basically, countries and governments will have the right to administer and set their own laws. And I'm fully supportive of that, unless you want to go to a country where there's no laws, right? So as a business in a country, we fall in the domain of the government, of the legal system. So we have to follow those rules and regulations. Okay, sir, here.
How do we move from currency speculation, black market transactions to real commerce?
How do we move there?
Like
over time. It will happen. My prediction, it will happen by itself, organically. We'll just let it flow. We just let the market play out. It's like the internet. 20 years ago, who was on the internet? It was just random people, you know, putting up pictures of themselves and stuff like that. And how do you go from that society to today where you have eBay and Amazon and real commerce going on, even with internet banking? So it'll happen. It'll happen, right? It's not the force of one company or one person pushing it. It's the force of the whole society changing in that direction because they all want it to happen, right? How about prices? Oh, I'll tell you about that. This is the fun part. Okay, here we go. So how many of you have more than one Bitcoin? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you have less than one Bitcoin? Oh, wow. Interesting. So there are a lot of you who have Bitcoins but less than one. So, okay, this is off. Now we're going to talk about a little bit off the record sort of conversation. Okay, here's why. So I'm the CEO of this exchange. So it's my duty to have a neutral perspective. I should not be encouraging speculation. Am I right? You don't want like the head of the New York Stock Exchange to say buy stocks. That'd be wrong, right? So I'm fully aware of that. But at the same time, I got into this spot because I believe in the future of Bitcoin. And by that definition, I believe in the future higher price of Bitcoin. That's why I am where I am today. Okay, there's no lie. That's the truth. So I'll tell you about my private thoughts about where the Bitcoin prices could go, but it is not a sign as to encourage you to buy Bitcoin. Okay. So for example, one Bitcoin today is $1,000, and there's how many?
12 million.
There's 12 million now. There could be at most 21 million in the next 100 years. So that's a lot. But the reality is not a lot. There's 7 billion people. Shanghai has a population of 20 million. If everyone in Shanghai bought a Bitcoin, it'd be over. There's no more left, right? So my point is this: gold. Okay, how much gold is there here? 1/20th of an ounce, right? It's worth about $60 US. You guys remembered. It turns out if I have 1 Bitcoin, that means I have 1/21 millionth of the world's supply of Bitcoins. Am I right? Is that a large number? It's a large number. I mean, is that a lot of Bitcoins? It's only 1, but as a fractional, it's actually quite significant. I mean, not for this room, but the whole world, 7 billion people. So if I told you, I'll give you 1/21 millionth of all the gold in the world. You know how much that is? Take a guess. How many of these would there be in 1/21 million? Do you understand my question? Am I asking it? So if you take all the gold in the world, you slice it into 21 million pieces, and I give you 1 slice, how much gold would there be? More or less than this? A lot more or a little more? A lot more. Turns out it's about 5 to 10 kilograms. 5 to 10, that's about $400,000 in today's prices. Okay, so if Bitcoin were to ever have an asset value equivalent to gold, okay, here's the big part, right? Then 1 Bitcoin could potentially be around $400,000 US. Right? And that's only matching gold's asset class. So my prediction is Bitcoin one day has a potential to become a truly global asset class. Remember, there's no language. It's not English. Bitcoin is not an American thing. It's not English. It's not a Chinese. It's not a Western culture, Eastern culture thing. It's a global thing. It runs on the whole internet. Right? Can it become a global asset class? Can it become a global currency standard in 100 years, in 20 years? Right? I think it has a potential. That's why we're passionate doing this company, doing the startup.
I think we're going to have to call an end to it.
So one last sentence is, if it does become that, it'll become a $1 trillion asset class, which is more than 100 times where it is today. $10,000, and then $100,000, and then it goes to $500,000, 1 million, 5 million. At that point, it's like, forget it, just keep going, right? So 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, and then I think they stopped here, $100 trillion. It's a little crazy. So when you have a newspaper article, front page list, you don't even count the number 0, you just know it's ridiculous. So we got starving billionaires on the street. We have 3 eggs that cost 100 billion Zimbabwe dollars. And this guy, I don't know if he's moving, it all depends on what kind of bill he has, right? If these are all $100 trillion notes, then I guess he's rich, but otherwise, this is a poor guy. So how does it affect real life, right? In China, it's the same thing's happening. So these slides were made for China. So inflation has been decent. These were the early, these are 50 cent, 1 RMB, 2 RMB. And this is the old version of 100 RMB. This is the new version. 100 RMB is about $15 US today. This is their largest note. And the analogy I use is how much did eggs cost? So in the 1980s, you can get 100 eggs. So you can get 1,000 eggs with 100 RMB. And then about 10 years later, you can only get 300 eggs. And today, 100 RMB can get you 100 eggs. So the question is, what happens in 20 years? Can you still buy as many eggs? Chicken eggs, right? So I'll talk quickly about Bitcoin, and then I'll wrap up these slides and go to about China. So by the way, if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'm speaking pretty fast going through these. So researchers have been studying digital currency for a long, long time. I'm sure even Stanford Computer Science Department, they've been talking about or studying this. And the problem is double spending, right? If you think about physical goods you can give to each other, and the attributes of me giving a physical good to someone else, let's say it's this piece of gold coin. Where is it? I lost it. No. So small, If I give this to someone, then I no longer have it. They have it by possession. But as you know, in this digital age, files can be transferred and copied. Emails are sent and copied. There's some seats over here in this area. And the problem is, how do you prevent someone from copying and pasting, digital currency or notes? So this is the topic of double spending. It's a very interesting research problem. And it's never been solved until Bitcoin came along. Because so this is 1/20th of an ounce. Do you know how much this is worth today? Roughly $60, that's right. So 1 ounce is about $1,200. So if you give me 60 or more dollars, I might give you this piece. But it used to be that one piece of this you can go to the bank and get one of these guys. And then if you have $20, you get 1 ounce of gold. Now, not so easy so much. So, oh yeah, it was on the screen, right? So paper money is no longer backed by physical assets. That's good or bad. But it only started in 1971. And in essence, the fiat currency regime has only been around for 42 years, which is a small sliver of whole of humanity. So everything before that, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, they used money that was more physical and tangible, about gold, silver, and so on. So today's bank, the history, banks came from being depositories for gold and silver. So what's the problem with fiat currency? We know about increasing money supply in the US. They use a fancy term called QE. A QE is an acronym for a fancy word called quantitative easing, which essentially just means printing money. So, this is not happening only in the US, but also in China, Japan, Europe. Everyone's printing money. And if the whole world prints money at the same pace, guess what happens? We don't feel it, because if you exchange US dollars for euros, for Japanese yen, for Chinese RMB, if they're all increasing at the same pace, then people don't feel it. So that's what's happening in the last 5 years since the financial crisis. So government CPI numbers are notoriously underreported, underreporting true inflation. So for example, I was in San Francisco today. I parked my car for 45 minutes. They charged me $12. $12, 15 years ago when I was at Stanford, could buy me a lot of big lunch and stuff. How much does lunch cost these days at Stanford? How much? $12, wow. Well, anyways, you know what I mean by inflation. So recent example, last decade, a country called Zimbabwe had hyperinflation. So I was actually born in Africa in a country called Ivory Coast, but thankfully not Zimbabwe. But anyway, Zimbabwe had hyperinflation. This banknote is, what is it? 10 or 100 trillion dollars. I'll show you the what I mean by that. So they started, with $5, $10, $20 Zimbabwe notes, and this is very similar to US dollars, topping out 100, and they started having 500, 1,000. Information can be easily copied. That's a fundamental problem. So 5 years ago, this guy, Satoshi Nakamoto, this is a pseudonym. We don't know who he is. And I am not Satoshi, by the way. Just people ask, am I Satoshi? I'm not Satoshi. If I were, I wouldn't be here. So that's what he said. Yeah, more on that later. So he published a paper. It was actually September, October, late 2008, 5 years ago exactly. And it's the first viable electronic digital cash. It solved the double spend problem. And the way they did it was using global ledger. So global ledger is where they keep information globally distributed on all computers, keep track of how many accounts have how many Bitcoins. Okay? So published it by 2008, Satoshi, first viable decentralized digital currency. It has all these features. It has a cap on how many Bitcoins. It's distributed peer-to-peer. We talked about that. And then I'll keep going. So the software itself was released almost 5 years ago in January 2009. So next month will be the 5-year anniversary of Bitcoin. So at that time, there were no Bitcoins in existence. And then it has an algorithm to generate these Bitcoins, and it's given away for free to people who participate in the mining process. So right now, as of today, there's a little over 12 million. It's open source, free to use, very secure, uses high-grade encryption, but same public-private key technologies that we're familiar with on the internet. Okay? Very transparent. All transactions are public. All ledgers are public, so everybody can see what's going on. And then pseudo-anonymous. The difference is that account numbers are not linked to real people's names. So you have Bitcoin accounts that have Bitcoins in them. You don't know who has it, but at least what's in there, how it got there, who sent it, and how it's got sent and how much is all visible. So here's a symbol. The B with the line through it. The interesting thing is, you know where they borrowed this from? You know what currency they borrowed this symbol from? This is a side story. Where?
Thai baht. Thai baht.
Thai baht, Thailand. Thailand. So they borrowed this symbol from Thailand. You know, the US dollar has the S with the line through it, the euro has the E with the line through it, you know, and so on and so forth. So the side story is that of all the countries in the world, the only one that's come out to criticize Bitcoin is Thailand. It's a true story. The central bankers say, oh, Bitcoin's bad, bad, bad. So I wonder if it's to do with the symbol. I'm happy to be back. So I studied computer science. So this was my my department, my building, or not my building, but the building where I worked at and studied at. So how many of you are in computer science here? That's it? Only what happened? Are they all programming outside? So are the rest of you Stanford students here or alums? I see some friends and alums here. That's great. So I'm very happy to be here. I just flew in this morning. I scheduled my flight to be here for Richard's talk. He told me there's going to only be 20 people, so I'm really impressed by the crowd. Okay, so I'm here to talk about Bitcoin and China and my startup in China called BTC China. So just to make a correction, I actually got involved earlier this year, so it's been about 8 months or so involved in BTC China. How many of you have heard of Bitcoin? I assume almost all. And how many of you have Bitcoins? Wow, that's awesome. This is why this is called Silicon Valley. You guys are all into it. This is great. And if those of you who have bank accounts in China, you can buy some at my exchange afterwards. So let's do this. I have two slides. I have echo here. Okay, so I have two decks here. This one is about Bitcoin in China. Another thing I could do is talk about Bitcoin at a high level. Would you guys want to go through some slides about Bitcoin at a high level? Okay, so let's do that. So I first prepared this deck half a year ago. So some of the numbers may be outdated, but I'll update you. Essentially, let's talk about what is Bitcoin, right? So we know it's a digital currency. We think it's a digital currency, but more importantly, is it really virtual currency, or is it more like money, or is it more like an asset? So what do you guys think? How many, show of hands, how many of you guys think it's really money? Okay, just like 12 people. How many, who thinks it's an asset? Well, more. Well, guess what? It turns out money and asset have a relationship. They're not exactly the same thing, but rather, you know, money is really a subset of, a kind of asset, if you will. Other types of assets include stocks, real estate, gold, and money is one kind of asset. So everybody has money, right? So it's the most common of all assets. And more broadly, if you look at assets, I'm going to go over some definitions of what makes an asset. These are the characteristics of an asset. You know, it's something useful, valuable, tangible. It's a resource and it's recognizable. And then when it comes to money, it's something more specific. It has to be acceptable, has to be durable, has to be portable, small units, has to be scarce, divisible, and uniform. So money is really a subset of asset. And then you look at what is Bitcoin. So here's my definition of Bitcoin. It's really a digital asset. So prior to Bitcoin's invention 5 years ago, the only types of digital assets are like email addresses or website URLs, host names. So Bitcoin is a new digital asset that behaves like money. Okay, it's limited and scarce, decentralized, peer-to-peer, distributed. It's pseudo-anonymous. It's open source, free to use, and then also has many features of currency and money. So what is money? Let's just go through that quickly. We have examples of gold, of cattle, seashells, and even stones, right? Large stones outside in some island. And then we have paper money, right? Paper money's been around forever, it feels like. But today's money is basically all fiat currency. Have you guys heard of the term fiat currency? The first reaction I get in China is they think it's a car, fiat, the car. No, it's fiat. It's sort of derogatory term. It just means that governments declare this money is legal tender, it has value by declaration, by fiat. It turns out this wasn't the case a century ago. So today's money, whether it's the US dollar, the Chinese RMB, or other dollar currencies, it's all fiat today. It's no longer backed by gold. It turns out in the early 1900s, the US dollar was backed by gold. So the notion of gold certificates, $1 bill was 1/20th of an ounce. I have some props. Let me see. So what I have here is 1/20th of an ounce. So here's a dollar, and this is 1/20th of an ounce of gold. This happens to be a China Panda. I don't know if you can the camera zoom in.